We can start now, I think. Good afternoon, everyone. I will be moderating today's. Uh, okay, so we can start, sir.
Yes, you can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Etisham Bhakt, Joint Secretary at the Gandhian Cultural Community of Korea. I welcome you to the online webinar on the topic Building Peace in Ukraine, a Gandhian Perspective, organized by the Gandhian Cultural Community of Korea. Gandhian Cultural Community of Korea was formed on 2nd October 2021. It was formed with the aim of spreading the message of nonviolence, love, truth, and disperse the Gandhian ideas, methodology, and philosophy among the people of Korea. Right from its inception, Gandhian Cultural Community of Korea has organized various webinars, courses, and programs to promote the teachings of Gandhi. Dialogues in collaboration with Gandhi Smriti and Darshan Smriti New Delhi were conducted to promote Gandhian ways and philosophy in South Korea in 2021. And thereafter, cycling event on the streets of South to promote his ideas of peace and happiness. We have also given an online educational course on Gandhi titled Nonviolent Communications to people from Korea and in India. Apart from that, our team toured to the city of Busan at an animal fair to promote the ideas of Gandhi's of compassion towards the animal. Every year, we pay tribute to Gandhi on the Martyrs' Day and conduct events on the birth anniversary. The team is headed by a group of 5 members with Dr. Lakhvinder Singh acting as its president. Now, without further delay, let's move on to our session. War in Ukraine is getting longer with no end in sight. Thousands of innocent people are losing their lives and livelihood. It is time we speak up and do something before it's too late and war goes nuclear, resulting in catastrophe of unprecedented scale. Building peace in Ukraine is greatest challenge of our times. In doing that, Gandhiji's philosophy of peaceful resolution of conflict could be our greatest help. It is time we go back to Gandhiji and to help and restore peace in Ukraine. Having said so, I would like to call Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, the president of the Gandhian Cultural Community of Korea, and also serving as the Director of Peace and Security Studies at Asia Institute in South, to welcome our guest. Dr. Lakhvinder, sir.
Thank you, Tesham. Thank you for the kind introduction of our community to our guest. I think even though we are very modest, we are we are doing our level best to introduce Gandhiji in South Korea, so that Gandhi's teaching can also Korean people can also benefit from Gandhi's teachings. I think today is a very great day for us, and we have invited some prominent Gandhian in the world to guide us when there's so much hopelessness in the world. Many people think that Ukraine war now have crossed the point of no return. But we are Gandhian. We cannot give up on peace. We must keep trying, must doing our best to restore peace in Ukraine.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, can you just turn off your video and switch it on again? There's some kind of a glitch.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, sir.
So, as I was trying to say, we simply cannot give up on peace. Though many people have convinced themselves that now war in Ukraine has crossed the point of no return. But we Gandhian have an eternal peace, eternal faith in peace. So we will keep talking about peace and we will keep promoting peace. I think if Gandhi's ideas are promoted honestly implemented honestly and truthfully by all the participants, we can still restore peace in Ukraine and avoid the nuclear catastrophe, which is about to happen in that part of the world. With that words, I would like to extend my welcome to my honored guest. I want to say many thanks to Ila Gandhi ji for accepting our request and coming to speak, give us her advice to us, all from Africa, South Africa. And then Gandhi Darshan Institute is very important in Delhi. They are anomalized with us. He's also going to give us his blessings, how we can learn from Gandhi ji in this kind of situation. Last but not least, my dear friend, Lieutenant General S. Amba, is also with us. He is going to give us his perspective. What can we do in this kind of situation? So I also welcome him very much to our meeting today. Thank you very much. So I look forward to hear all of you to share your views on what can we do in this kind of complex situation. Natasha, back to you.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you for welcoming our guest. Now I would like to invite Honorable Ella Gandhi, the granddaughter of Gandhiji. She is the chairperson of Gandhi Development Trust and Phoenix Settlement Trust, South Africa. She is South African peace activist and former politician. She served as a member of parliament in South Africa from 1994 to 2004. In 2014, she was awarded the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman, the highest honor for overseas Indians conferred by the President of India. We welcome you, Mrs. Ella Gandhi.
Thank you. Thank you for this invitation. And I want to just greet all the prominent people present here today, especially the many guests who are here, General Lamba and Dr. Anamale, and many others who are present, I see, at this gathering. So when we refer to the war in Ukraine, we see emerging two narratives in the international community. Those who believe that Russia is the aggressor and therefore it is up to Russia to cease fire. And those who believe that Ukraine was being used by the European countries to build up a fortress against any future Russian attack on the West or to block the buildup of power by Russia. And therefore, the initiative to stop the war must come from Ukraine and its Western European allies. So these are the two narratives that we see emerging in the international community. Looking at the issues from a Gandhian perspective, these arguments become quite irrelevant, as Gandhiji has clearly stated that conflict will always be there for as long as humanity is on this planet. The question is not about whether there is conflict and which side is justified, but it is about how the situation is handled, with truth and non-violence as the basis, rather than aggression and violence. This then is the key in viewing this war for me, in my perspective. That is what we should be looking at. In my view, a Gandhian solution can be found if we can reason with all involved in this war in order to get them to see the crime they are committing by using violent means. And I say crime because I see not only the destruction of people and property, but also the environmental degradation that this war is causing. And That degradation affects every person on this planet, every living object in this planet. The only reasonable and humane thing to do is to cease fire immediately. So then using non-violent means, we have to strategize against that which is unjust. Now, but we know from what we hear about that this is really easily said than done. We can say whatever we want from the rooftops, but will it affect these people who are participating in the war? So few people who take to violent means will relent, lay down their arms because we are calling on them. History shows that this can be done, but using non-violent means and using Gandhian strategy. Nelson Mandela in our country took to violence when he faced the intransigence of the apartheid regime in our country, South Africa. But having read Gandhian books, he began to change and to accept the superiority of a non-violent approach. He succeeded. We see that he succeeded. That's why today South Africa is liberated. In the same way, many other countries also succeeded using non-violent means. And later on, I will illustrate some of the examples. So discussing what is happening in Ukraine and looking for Gandhian solutions would entail, as a first step, to do all we can to stop the killing and the destruction immediately, which means ceasefire on all sides. The war not only contributes to the killing and maiming of human beings, but also contributes to the destruction of the environment, as I have said previously, and to the loss of innocent lives and property, as well as livelihoods of millions affected by the war, and the people who have been displaced by this war. The whole world is affected and in many ways involved. It is therefore our joint responsibility to take action to stop this carnage immediately. So for today's discussion, I see 4 points for discussion. I want to raise 4 points. The first one is to discuss what would Gandhiji do if he was here today. The second point is why is nonviolence superior to violence? The third point is how can we persuade the warring parties to come to the table to negotiate a settlement rather than to continue on this path of destruction? And the fourth one, what may be some of the benefits that the world can derive from taking action right now? So looking at the first one, what would Gandhiji do? And so looking at this point, we see that Gandhiji would definitely discourage the use of violence as far as it's possible. But like with many issues, Gandhiji was never dogmatic. His life was filled with experiments, and he reserved the right to change his mind at any time. So it is difficult to predict what he would say and do in a particular circumstance conclusively. We can only answer based on our own thought processes and interpretations of what Gandhiji had said and written over the years of his life in confronting various situations. So if you read, for instance, Ranveer Samadhar's book, Gandhi's Dilemma, one would be quite apprehensive about what can and cannot be achieved through nonviolent means and through using Gandhian approaches. However, taking the example of South Africa, with the help of India and the international community, we see how anti-apartheid movements throughout the world and their work affected the South African situation, got the South African government, the apartheid government, which was a very strong government at that time, and backed by the Western powers, come to its knees and accept a non-violent solution. So we can, in this way, see that through international pressure, countries can come to the table. So having cited that example, I want to go on to the next point, and I will come back to how we can do when we get to that. The next point that I want to raise is, why is non-violent means superior to violent means? Now, if you look at the South African position, again, there were governments who provided armaments and support to the resistance forces of South Africa. Mr. Mandela himself received training, received support from many countries during the time that he was engaged in a war against the South African government, South African apartheid government. So you see that people, international community, support some of these liberation movements that have taken to arms. On the other hand, we see humanity, people who support the anti-apartheid movement through using non-violent means. So we see violent means on the one hand and non-violent means on the other. So what I am saying is, why is non-violent means superior to the violent means? And Gandhiji maintained that means and ends must both be noble, ethical, and humane. He clearly indicated that where violence and inhumane methods are used to achieve a goal, no matter how justified that goal, the end result will reveal a tension-filled atmosphere and often nowhere near the goal that one set out to achieve initially. So whatever our goal, no matter how noble, if we use violent means, at the end of it, we will see violence continuing because we have unleashed a violent society through using violent means. History, as well as our own life experiences, reveal many instances which clearly indicate that strife and misery result after achieving a goal through violent means, whereas goals achieved non-violently have a much better outcome in most instances. Richard Gregg, in his book, The Power of Nonviolence, indicates the instances where people have been able to achieve their goals successfully using nonviolent methods. He quotes the examples of Hungary and South Africa and many other countries. And he shows how nonviolent means, using nonviolent means, you achieve at the end a better goal, a better society emerges from that, a more humane society, rather than an aggressive, angry society. So war actually dehumanizes people, whereas non-violence builds up the humanity in human beings. And therefore, a non-violent solution is a much better solution than a violent solution. My third point is, how then can we persuade the two sides and their allies in this war in Ukraine to negotiate rather than engage in this war? Strategies have been used in the past to bring to the table many warring, factions. And so let's look at some of these strategies. Again, if we look at Richard Gregg's book, The Power of Nonviolence, and we look at some of the communities. I talked about Hungary, and I will just refer to the situation there and what happened. Unfortunately, our history books look more at war situations than at the non-violent situations. So I will just go through very briefly of this. This happened during the mid-19th century. The Emperor Franz Joseph was trying to subordinate Hungary to the Austrian power, contrary to the terms of the old treaty of union of those two countries. The Hungarian moderates felt helpless as they were too weak to fight. But Francis D., a Catholic landowner of Hungary, protested to them. And he said, and I quote, "Your laws are violated, yet your mouths remain closed. Woe to the nation which raises no protest when its rights are outraged. It contributes to its own slavery by its silence. The nation which submits to injustice and oppression without protest is doomed." Dick proceeded to organize a scheme for independent Hungarian education, agriculture, and industry, a refusal to recognize the Austrian government in any way, and a boycott against Austrian goods. He admonished the people not to be betrayed into acts of violence, nor to abandon the ground of legality. This is the safe ground, he said, on which, unarmed ourselves, we can hold our own against armed forces. If suffering must be necessary, suffer with dignity. That is what he said. And this advice to the Hungarian group resulted in their victory. And the Austrians had to retract. So this shows that nonviolence can, have very beneficial effects, and we can bring it. To Francis D. to persuade the people to lay down, to protest, not violently, but non-violently. Similarly, we see in South Africa, in 1906, for instance, Gandhiji started the non-violent movement against the laws in South Africa, unjust laws in South Africa. And from 1906 right up to 1913, they protested in South Africa non-violently, including people like Kasturba. Kasturba joined the protest action in South Africa and courted imprisonment in South Africa with a number of women who participated in that. The young Beliama participated in the struggle against the South African injustice. And in 1913, they won the demands that they had made at that time. They were limited demands, but they won them. through nonviolent means. We see also, I talked about the South African anti-apartheid movement. Now, many people from South Africa went into exile after the repressive government, repressed many people, house arrested, banned the organizations, political organizations, and so on. These people who went into exile then began to mobilize international community. And we had people like Father Trevor Huddleston, and many other people who worked overseas, in building up the anti-apartheid movement. What the anti-apartheid groups then did was to begin to look at boycotting South African goods, putting an economic pressure against the South African government through boycotting South African products, and then also, isolating South Africa, because that then affects their dignity. And the people in South Africa, those who supported apartheid, would begin to look at apartheid as an anathema. And that is what happened when we had the cultural and sports boycott of South Africa, because people like to participate internationally. But when they saw that the international community was rejecting them, that if South Africans went out into the world, they were being treated badly. They were being treated as pariahs in other countries. And therefore, they began to see and pressurize their government to come to the table and negotiate a peaceful settlement, which is what happened. And we had peace in South Africa in 1994. So what I'm saying is that international communities can play a major role. We have to look at a strategy, how we can persuade both the Ukrainian people, the Russian people, to lay down arms and come to the table to have a discussion. And how we can persuade the Western countries, those countries that are supporting and providing armaments and military support to those two countries. So in that way, we can non-violently begin to pressurize all these groups in order for them to come to the table. Now, by doing that, what are some of the benefits that we derive from non-violent approaches? And I'm looking at two books in particular. One is a book written by Thomas Merton, and the other is this book, The Power of Nonviolence. In both books, we see that there are, definite instances and examples of how the communities themselves benefit from using nonviolent means, and how they actually don't benefit from using violent means. So I'm going to quote two people. White has made a statement, and this is what he says. This is the moment of uninhibited perversion, which can now ally themselves with technical power in a brief period of dominance. This short reign of Antichrist depends on the fusion of two principles, which are both vicious because they represent only a part of European or Western human nature: instinctive vitality distorted into sadism, and differentiating human vitality distorted into quantitative expansion. This is what he talked about, when the World War was continuing. And writing on this, he further talked about the days of Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin at the beginning of the Second World War. The short reign of the Antichrist would soon, he believed, give way to a reign of light and peace. And that is what they were striving for. So this is what White pointed out to them. What can happen with continuing to use this kind of violence? On the other hand, we also have Ananda Kumaraswamy, who wrote about the same time as White and viewed the sickness of civilization in more religious terms and with much of the same seriousness. He said, and I quote here, the question remains the same. It is a crisis of sanity first of all. The problem of the nations are the problems of mentally deranged people, but magnified 1,000 times because they have the full, straight-faced approbation of a schizoid society, schizoid national structures, schizoid military and business complexes, and need one add schizoid religious sects. And we see the same thing happening in the Ukraine and Russian war at the present moment, that there are all these forces that Mr. Kumarasamy talked about. And he said, we are at war with ourselves and they therefore at war with one another. Western man is unbalanced. And the question, can he recover himself, is a very real one. Can he recover himself? And this is what we ask. Can the people in Ukraine who are at war, who are actually fighting, recover themselves at the end of it? And so that is the question that most people who use violence have to confront themselves with. On the other hand, Bapuji says, and Gandhiji, and I quote, there is no limit whatsoever to the measure of sacrifice that one may make in order to realize the oneness with all life. But certainly the immensity of the ideal sets a limit to your wants. That you will see is the antithesis of the position of the modern civilization, which says, increase your wants. Those who hold the belief think that increase of wants means an increase of knowledge, whereby you understand the infinite better. On the contrary, Hinduism rules out indulgence and multiplication of wants, as these hamper one's growth to the ultimate identity with the universal self. So when we begin to realize that we have to decrease our own wants and our own aggrandizement, then we will be able to use nonviolent means in order to achieve our ends and achieve a better society at the end of it. So a better society can be achieved through nonviolence, violent means. And Gandhiji envisages a tactical nonviolence confined to one area of life or to an isolated moment. That is not nonviolence. His nonviolence is a creed which embraces all of life in a consistent and logical network of obligations. One cannot be violent, for example, to interpersonal or family relations and non-violent with regard to conscription and war. Genuine non-violence means not only non-cooperation with glaring social evils, but also the renunciation of benefits and privileges that are implicitly guaranteed by forces which conscience cannot accept. Austere political implications of the non-violent way of life are suggested in some of these texts of Gandhiji. So we have to make those sacrifices. Using non-violence is not just talking about it. It means implementing it in our lives. It is a way of life and not just an approach to some particular thing. When humanity begins to understand that, we can use nonviolent means in a much, much more better way with much better outcomes. So I believe, and I think Gandhiji has shown us the way, that we have to change our lives. He said, be the change you wish to see in the world. So the change begins with each one of us. We begin the change and then we influence others, and it has a ripple effect. And so the entire world can change into a better world, to a world where which people, the young people today are looking for. And when you read what Greta Thunberg and other young people are saying today, they are calling for a peaceful, non-violent way of life where we can save the planet from self-destruction. So this is what Gandhiji has called for. And I think that if we can persuade our humanity, and particularly the young people who face a bleak future if they continue on the violent path, then I think we can all gather together as an international community and bring an end to all these wars, not just in Ukraine, but in all parts of the world. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I hope I haven't taken too much of your time today. Thank you very much. Can't hear you. You are muted.
Thank you, Mrs. Gandhi, for your valuable insight. I hope your views would provide a necessary roadmap for negotiations and peace in the war between Ukraine and Russia, and greater good for mankind in general. Next, I would like to call on Sri A. Annamalai. He is actively involved in a mission to take the message of Gandhi to the younger audience, currently serving as the director at the National Gandhi Museum, New Delhi. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Ilaji, आपका आशीर्वाद है. Thank you so much for enlightening us on the recent development at the international arena. And National Gandhi Museum also organized an interfaith prayer immediately after the declaration of war by the Russia against Ukraine. All the ambassadors of various countries also participated. And immediately after that, we also organized a peaceful demonstration of the youth and students in front of Gandhi statue. We are taking this message of peace and sensitize the people of the need of peace. That is the mandate of our Gandhian organizations. And when the Ukraine ambassador asked me to organize a get-together of the ambassadors of various countries to have a prayer for peace in Ukraine, I very gently denied to put it in the invitation that prayer for peace in Ukraine, and instead I put a prayer for warless world. Therefore, our aim should be not only peace in Ukraine, peace in the world. How to go about that is very, very important. And Gandhi was very clear when the seeds of violence and the seeds of war in the minds of the people, we have to remove from that, from the very root itself. When the weapons of mass destruction is increased day by day, thanks to our science and technology, there is always chances of war. Therefore, our immediate concern should be to bring the nations together for disarmament. In 1962, after the Chinese war with India, the Gandhian organizations, especially Gandhi Smarak Nidhi and Gandhi Peace Foundation, organized an anti-nuclear convention in New Delhi. Of course, with the assistance of the government of India at that time, a very big international convention. And in the convention, they have decided to take the message of peace and non-violence propagated by Gandhi to the entire world, especially among the heads of the nations. Therefore, Rajaji and R.R. Divakar, that time he was the president of the Gandhi Smarak Nidhi, and secretary of the Gandhi Peace Foundation, Mr. G. Ramachandran, UN Dapper, and all the big leaders of Gandhian movement met John F. Kennedy at the United States, and they met the president of the Secretary General of the United Nations and pressurized them for disarmament. That time, the non-aligned movement was also so strong. Therefore, it was possible at that time to pressurize the two blocs. At that time, it was a capitalistic and socialistic bloc, communistic bloc. Now we have other nomenclature has changed, but the same bloc is there. Therefore, the third force is very, very mute at this time. This is one handicap. Therefore, how to activate this third force? I think it is the responsibility of the Gandhian and peace-loving people very critical juncture. In 1915 to 1945 was a very critical time in the history of the world. We have faced a lot of wars, internal wars in Europe, First World War, Second World War. Therefore, the leaders of that time believed that violence is the only alternative and war is the only solution to settle our disputes. But at the same time, from, as Ilaji said, he discovered the non-violent direct action, Satyagraha, in 1906. At the same period, Gandhi demonstrated the power of non-violence to the whole world. He completely changed the narrative of the world that might was right. From might was right to right was might. And Gandhi himself participated in war during the Zulu rebellion or Boer War. He was acted as a volunteer of the Indian Ambulance Corps and Stretcher Bearer Corps. Therefore, he experienced the ill effects of the destruction of war face to face than anybody else, any of the world leaders of that time. Therefore, his concern for peace and the concern for the methodology is so relevant because he involved in such activities. When the whole world was going against the will of the people, it is the duty of the people to show that we don't want war. We want peace. That power to say so is always with the people. And Gandhi has taken this people's voice to the forefront. That is very important to note. Now, because our people are so silent, if we are speaking against the will of the government, we may be called as anti-nationals. Therefore, we have to be very careful while taking a stand, very strong stand on the issues which is affecting the people's wishes. And we are claiming ourselves that we are more civilized and more educated, and we are more scientifically advanced. And is it not our duty to find out a civilized means to settle our disputes? And do you think war is the civilized means to settle the disputes? And when Gandhi demonstrated the power of non-violence, in 1945, the world has witnessed the power of the atom bomb. Powerful destruction. Then immediately asked by the journalist to Gandhi that you are talking about non-violence, truth and non-violence, and the atom bomb was so powerful it destroyed everything. Do you still there? Still have the faith on non-violence? And Gandhi's reply was remarkable. And he said, do I still adhere to my faith in truth and non-violence? Has not the atom bomb exploded that faith? Not only has it not done so, but it has clearly demonstrated to me that the twins constitute the mightiest force in the world. Before it, the atom bomb is of no effect. The two opposing forces are wholly different in kind. The one moral and spiritual, the other physical and material. The one is infinitely superior to the other, which by its nature has an end. The force of the spirit is ever progressive and endless. Its full expression makes it unconquerable in the world. In saying this, I know that I have said nothing new. I merely bear witness to the fact. What is more, that force resides in everybody, man, women, and child, irrespective of the color of the skin. Only in many it lies dormant, but it is capable of being awakened by judicious training. Here, another important point he has noted. And we have in all our countries a minister for defense. And we are spending a very huge amount for our military establishment. And our respectable Lieutenant General is also in our panel. And he knew that how much we are spending on weapons, arms and ammunition, and modernizing our war strategy, and how much we are spending on research and development. And at the same time, is there any country who have the Ministry of Peace? Very, very few. And very, very less amount is spending on the training for peace. And Shanti Sena, as visualized by Gandhi. And after Gandhi, Vinoba Bhave has taken up that job, and the concept of civilian defense. These are all even now in a growing stage. Therefore, the government should consciously spend more money. And these are all investments on giving training to the youngsters on peaceful resolution of conflicts. And in Madurai Kamaraj University, there was a course, a beautiful course, MSc in peacemaking. So we have studied the interdisciplinary approach to peace building. Such courses should be popularized among other universities, and the organizations responsible for peace and nonviolence should also taken up the training program for Shanti Sainik and also peaceful resolution of conflicts. And Gandhi also noted in his Gandhi said the history is the record of perpetual war, but we are trying to make new history. So Gandhi knew that he is making a new history. When J.P. Kripalani asked Gandhi that I am the professor of history and studied the world history, but no country has liberated or gained independence through non-violence. How do you say non-violence will give you the power to get the independence? Then Gandhi replied, yes, you are a professor of history, but I am the maker of history. Therefore, he said, history is a record of perpetual wars, but we are trying to make new history. I say this as I represent national mind so far as non-violence is concerned. I have reasoned out the doctrine of the sword. I have worked out its possibilities and come to the conclusion that man's destiny is to replace the law of jungle with the law of conscious love. How to make it? Unless you have empathy on the people. Now war is on between Russia and Ukraine. It's not the war only between the two nations. We are so intertwined, interrelated, and interconnected, as Frijov said. So our relationships are interconnected. Therefore, the war between two nations affects all the countries. Recently, a year back, the whole world was affected by Corona. Our economy was down. Only mad people can do war like between Ukraine and Russia. And it's a time for us to recapture our the losses we have incurred so far. Our petroleum prices are increasing day by day because of the war. And the Western world are supporting, as Ilaji said, the two narratives. One is from the perspective of the Ukraine and Western world, and another one in the perspective of the Russia. And the common people are believe that this war is useless, and not only useless, it ruined the economy of the whole world. Therefore, immediately the war should be stopped. And how to do it? And who will pressurize the government? Because now the power of the people is shrinking day by day. This is very dangerous symptom. The corporate sector, the government, and the military establishments, the arms traders, they are becoming more powerful, becoming more and more powerful than the people. Therefore, now we can't realize the power of the people, the organizations working for uniting the people. Therefore, it is very urgent need that organizations who are working for peace should unite together internationally. When Gandhi was alive, the pacifist of the world wanted to meet Gandhi to discuss about how to go about for warless world. But unfortunately, Gandhi was shot down on January 30th. But even then, the pacifists of the world met at Sevagram and decided to go about to make the world warless world. Therefore, it is our conscious duty of the Gandhian organizations and peace-loving people of the world to unite together to condemn the war of any kind, and especially the war between the Ukraine and Russia. And thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity you have given on the eve of 75th death anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, and the man of non-violence, apostle of non-violence and peace. On behalf of National Gandhi Museum, I thank the organizers for organizing such an important event today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Annamalai. I appreciate and thank you for all the points that you have made. Next and the final guest speaker we have is Lieutenant General Lakhvinder Singh Lamba. He retired as Vice Chief of Army Staff, Indian Army, with comprehensive experience and understanding of the external and internal security environment, perspective planning, with exposures to defense cooperation, military diplomacy, international relations, and conflict prevention. He is currently engaged with Indian and international forums for strategic and security initiatives, defense analysis, and track 2 dialogues. Currently, he is serving as the president of Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies, New Delhi. Mr. Lamba, we welcome you for your speech.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Atisham. Thank you. At the outset, I'm very grateful to good morning, all participants, and a special welcome to Madam Ela Gandhi, who we are proud to be on this panel with. And a warm welcome also to be interacting with the other elite panelists who have a far more depth knowledge than I personally have, because I am on the other side of where the values actually of Gandhiji belong. But our childhood actually came up amongst Gandhian values. I mean, for us, if there was history, it probably began with Mahatma Gandhi. It was there in our roots, it was there in our soul, it was there in our teachings. And it was a period when we entered the world in 1951. It was that immediate phase when Mr. Gandhi's teachings, values, and his stature was of a very different order. Today we had a wonderful listening and revival of those values by Madam Ela Gandhi, and of course Mr. Annamalai's another, he's so knowledgeable about it. But I'm personally grateful to Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, who heads this institute there, the Gandhian Cultural Community of Korea. Both of us have been working for a long time on many other strategic and issues that actually relate to war and how to stop war and conflict prevention for a long time. And I'm grateful to him to have given me this opportunity to join. I have tried to put across the views that some of them are actually quite in line with Madam Ella Gandhi's, and I think she narrated two or three things very important that struck me. One is the narratives that are there. That's who is actually the narratives are all about. Who is the aggressor? Is it Ukraine? Is it Russia? Is it actually the fueling of the fire that has brought us to this? But at the end of the result is that humanity is at risk. She also mentions that we need to involve everyone. We need to address these narratives, and we need to involve everyone. And finally, the key word I picked up from her was, so what strategy do we evolve to be able to do this? And I think I will go down in the next 15 minutes to address a few of the salient issues. First, I'll take why should Gandhiji's values be revalued again and or reinstated now in this scenario? I think very important. First is the conflict scenarios, the conflict situation then means in 30s, 40s. In fact, his struggle began 1910, 1917, 1918, 1930, and finally we saw what happened in 1947. So we've read all his history, and I've refreshed that history before I have tried to put them all together. So the conflict scenarios then and now, values of Mr. Gandhi, known to everyone, but I'll highlight just two or three that I need to apply. Finally, what are the institutions of peace? There is only one. I'll give a brief about it. And finally, what does this mean? What does the Gandhian values mean towards building peace in Ukraine? How can they work, if at all? And I have worked out not a strategy, but certainly a roadmap where we can put this together. So if you people talk to say that Gandhian values are relevant today, it's important for me to recall and compare that there were the situations of conflict and disagreement, and the human suffering was quite at its peak during Gandhiji's time. If you look at the 1945 war, the World War had just ended, 1945, with the first use of nuclear bombs on two cities in Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Before that, the World War I had ended had started in 1919 and then finished in the early 1920s. But we had wars in between all of this. Gandhiji's own alternatives that he was doing were in 1917 when he had the Champaran, the Satyagraha, then 1918, Kheda Mill, 1930, Salt. So I'm comparing that while these conflicts were going on, he had realized the futility of these conflicts, and he had pursued what he felt were the values of Satyagraha. He also had fantastic values like Sarvodaya, which meant upliftment for universal upliftment, Sarvodaya, truth, his experiments of truth, and so on. So I think that was very important. And not that the World War had engaged the whole, it was a global event. And where did it leave? Where did 45 leave the world? 50 to 70 years behind time, destruction of humanity in many countries of the world, and took 50 years to resurrect or reconstruct the world. Similarly, today, if you see, well, in India's context, we've had wars from 1948, just immediately after independence in Kashmir. Then we've had 62, we had 65, 71, and thereafter it's been a very conflict-prone environment. So we see that we are into it. We've had there have been after in the 70s, there's been the famous Vietnam War, there has been the Iraq War, and wars are endless. And finally, why the new scenarios must be addressed now with alternatives is because if you see South China Seas, you see the Indian border, India-China border, you see the South China Seas, you see the Indo-Pacific. These are all You see the South Asian subcontinent, Pakistan, India, China, in the Indian Ocean, what can happen? We find that the conflict-prone situations are rife. I have faced many of these situations personally in my 40 years of service, military service, and seen them from a very close angle, initially at the tactical level, but then strategic perspectives, which gave me understanding to actually deal with them to the best of our ability, more in military domains than this. But we also knew that in every conflict resolution, along with war, there has to be a dual track on which peace must flow, otherwise war will be a never-ending process. So those were the 2-3 things I wanted to mention, conflict scenarios. And then Gandhiji's values were simply that peace is an alternative. 3 things I'll reiterate is, where does war bring us to? Destruction, suffering. We saw a simple event like partition in 1947. Nobody knows. It's not the number of casualties that matter. It's what happened and what those casualties suffer. If you see what's going on in Ukraine or Russia, both sides are having casualties. So the kind of human suffering is above the number of casualties. And I think, therefore, there is a need to inject those rich values again. That if war has never succeeded in making the world a peaceful place, what is wrong with it and why we need to take alternative paths. The third thing is about the institutions of peace. Now, after the First World War, after the Second World War, and while Gandhiji's movements were carrying on, I would quite correlate that non-violence emerged as a better alternative. And the setting up of the United Nations factually can be related to the lessons and learnings from Gandhi's values and way to look at a peaceful world, to make humanity be more prosperous and probably happy. And I think that is where the UN set up diplomacy, military, civil, those networks, infinite networks of medical aid, just to address all this. They were so well connected, but they didn't succeed. A monstrous monolith like the United Nations has succeeded in very few directions so far. And I think even if you look at it, you question its ability to do the purpose for which it was set up. It is actually, despite such high-ranking positions, such high-ranking powers, when you put it to effect, if that be the test, well, I think the test questions the endurance or the durability of the position of the United Nations. So I think the institutions themselves, and in one line, if you ask me, the so-called Mighty Five probably have undermined the entire system of United Nations. And because these 5 states, 5 countries, inadvertently have been involved, many of them today are doing an excellent job by resolving, but there are always 1 or 2 on the other side of the fence, and you know who I mean, that today are prepared to continue the troubles that we have suffered all this while. So the institutions are at risk. And so, having seen the failure of the institutions, we can come to 1 or 2 more aspects. And what is the key issues at this conflict? If we see this, it's territorial sovereignty, it is threat perspectives, it's military power, and it's the leadership. The 4 pillars that actually make the world unstable. And this environment actually questions whether any other alternative is ever going to work or not. So in my view, we need to address that, ensure that the values not only of Mr. Gandhi, but there are values of Lord Buddha. There are values. We are a country where many other leading leaders have actually propagated, and from there, and people like Mr. Dalai Lama, I mean, Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, we have a host of them who have won freedom, independence by means other than violent means. So it comes to an acceptance that if the United Nations has failed, but there have been success stories, the ones I recounted now, show you that there is still a way forward. And I think the strength will be at two levels. First, the people, and second, the leadership. I think because of the desire to grow, desire to become make the world unipolar, desire to challenge the other person, we are getting into an endless spiral of domination and squeezing every resource of the world, which is leading to more and more Martin Luther King, and so on. I can name so many more. Therefore, we have a viable alternative today. And simply going forward, I'll give a small strategy as to how this can be held. Finally, that is the aim. If I put together what the values are we highlighting, why I have played conflict scenarios then and now. I have also said that while the World War concluded, many struggles in this period, particularly in this period or concurrent or astride this period in Africa, have all succeeded by persuasion, by non-violence. And that's where we need to decide once again, have the 10 conflicts I recounted after the 1945, have they led us to any peace, or are they likely to? So applying a small strategy that I could think of is firstly that we need we need to understand, and that's for everyone across the world, that war is a never-ending business. It's business for many because the moment there is arms, it's an industry, it's a business for everyone. It only meets the interest of powers that are advanced, have great monetary, capability, and therefore capability. It's always well said, in my view, no economic power has ended without becoming a military power, and no military power has ended up without pulling up its economy to a level to be leading its military power. So I think this is a vicious cycle where the military and economy have to be diagnosed in a manner which must remain supreme out of the two. So first step, we must have a ceasefire in the Ukraine war. So I'm coming specifically the strategy for the suggestions or a few thoughts I can say for the Ukraine war. The world must, through the UN, must appeal for ceasefire to happen immediately. Two, there is no reason or need to identify who the aggressor is. It can take us centuries to pinpoint, and lessons of the past wars have never been conclusive in identifying who the aggressor was. Two, don't always look for identifying the aggressor as of now. Third, that non-violence or rationality or rational thinking will be able to give solution even to territorial and sovereignty based contestations. These are all man-made, but it is extremely important for making sure that everybody understands what the outcome is. Fourth, if non-violence is accepted mentally and can replace or coexist with the mental mindset that war is the only way forward for my country. When I say my country, if everybody in the country thinks my country must be supreme and we should be one day the Middle Kingdom and we should be the Eastern Kingdoms and so on, we have to not only work to pacify our own ambitions, but to quell other ambitions by persuasion and by perspectives that must compel others to step back. If there is a ceasefire and there are UN resolutions, the fifth point is no vote is extraordinary or above the other. The vote of those veto powers stands as one in any further resolution for peace. They cannot, as has been happening, they veto many resolutions, they veto many suggestions and recommendations. But I think when it comes next time to vote for stopping conflict, I think the answer is just count one country as one vote. Sixth, freeze NATO expansion. We will have to impel the countries to say, stop expansion, while Russia will have to be made to stop moving forward and doing the humanitarian destruction. It's happening both sides. I am nobody to qualify who's inflicting what, but it's a matter to understand that humanity has to be center stage over over victor or vanquished. And I think the moment that feeling comes out, there will be at least a pause for us to see how can we stop this endless war, this war that's causing destruction to humanity. Last two points. Uh, Global leadership. I think every leader today gets rated by hard power. In my view, it may have been a good option, but if Hitler succeeded, or if Stalin succeeded, or whoever succeeded, where did they ultimately land up in the annals of history? It's for us to see. So global leadership, hard power shows today, but ultimately every country's soft power must come up equal in position to stand alongside hard power. It should actually, a good leader and good leadership should actually be probably having both strengths, but prioritize soft power over its hard power to help resolve problems of the world. So the leadership must change. And finally, a very good point made by Mr. Anamlai, there is no training for peace. We are not made to think that way. Conflict resolution, I have done in my master's in the King's College London in international relations. It is a very important subject. We need to understand what are the basics and fundamentals of conflict resolution. It has to be taught for the teachers of tomorrow. And I finally think that conflict resolution is not only possible, but it's imperative. It's imperative for tomorrow if we have to uplift the global poverty, if we have to give equality, and if we have to ensure that the world is a more prosperous and stable place. If we owe our future generations what our experiences of life is, it is to stand together for peace and for resolving conflict resolution through peaceful means. And people alone can make this difference. I end here, and if there are any questions later, we'll see. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable comments. This discussion would not have been complete without the input from someone from the military background and who has a first-hand experience on war and conflict. We thank you for your valuable inputs. Now I would like to call on Mr. Dr. Lakhvinder Singh for his remarks.
Thank you, Tesha. After listening to such prominent Gandhian speakers, I think there's not much left for me to add. I just want to say that so many innocent people are dying in Ukraine. Even now, there's no war in our houses, but somebody at some place is dying. And as a Gandhian, we can feel their pain. And that is very important. That's what we are doing, trying to do that. Even though war is very far away from our houses, but war is being felt in our hearts. And that is the true Gandhian. We simply cannot say that war is far away, that war is not in our home, so that we don't need to do anything. No, we have to be active and we have to do everything possible in our hands so that no innocent man, no innocent child die unnecessarily. When I was trying to plan this seminar, a Korean colleague asked me that, sir, do you really think that Mr. Putin will agree to your Gandhian proposal to stop the killing of innocent people? I said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who's killing who. Our job is to innocent people are dying, and we have to keep trying. We have to keep trying. We have to feel the pain of the innocent child dying motherless in the battlefield. And that is the true Gandhian spirit. The real problem I feel from my perspective is that many people don't know the power of Gandhi's ideas. There's so much ignorance of peaceful conflict resolution, the power, the kind of role it can bring to, it can play into bringing the conflict into an end. Now, suppose in Korea, not many people think that Gandhian philosophy can really be helpful in bringing Gandhian violent conflict to an end by using Gandhian method. Why? Because they never taught about this kind of methods. So we have to be more proactive. Even though in India, we are fully convinced that Gandhian way is the only way forward, but there are many countries in the world, many people in the world who still don't know the power of Gandhian way of resolving conflict. So,
Excuse me, sir.
yes,
Sorry to interrupt you. Can you just turn off your video and again, because it's again some kind of a glitch, I guess.
okay. So the point I was trying to make is that because of this, we have to be more proactive. We have to be more action oriented, so that people in the world understand what actually Gandhian way of doing stopping war in the world is. Now, Ukraine war is spreading. Ukraine was separating, and as we know, USA is arming Ukraine. So, a natural way of doing things that once one country attack another country, bigger country lose the battle and war is ended. But here, outside powers are playing role, and they are refusing a bigger power to surrender. So this kind of, it means war can go limitlessly, endlessly. So that is why it's very important for people like us to intervene into the war and do something about it. So now, as a professor, I'm going to propose 3-4 ideas what we can do. Now, what we do, as you know, Gandhian way or peaceful way of doing things, there are 4 methods through which we can bring this kind of conflict into an end. One is the mediation. One person mediate between 2 warring powers. Another method is arbitration, that 2 parties agree. 2 parties agree that this person will decide how it should be settled. Now, third is both parties agree to compromise on their demands and try to give in something to the other party. Another part is that both parties reconcile, conciliation. So there are basically 4 methods of peaceful conflict resolution. I think in this current situation, I propose that we should try to use the arbitration method, that both countries can agree that this panel, this number of countries could be our arbitration panel or arbitration commission, and whatever decision they take will be acceptable to us. Until we do make some real proposal how to bring this war to an end, this war will not end. So we have to come forward with some proposals. So my proposal is that let's push towards arbitration. Let's put that both countries agree to put in place kind of a neutral commission, a neutral nations commission, or a neutral person, so that both of them can trust each other, and then whatever decision that neutral commission takes will be acceptable to both the parties. It should be binding on both the parties. So this is the way forward. Otherwise, this war can keep going. As you know, in this current war, only one country, Ukraine, is suffering. There's no war in Russia. The Russian people are sitting enjoying their lives, but in Ukraine, innocent people are dying. So this country, we have to come forward very fast with a practical proposal that what can be done to stop the war. So I think the arbitration is the best method through which we can bring the war to an end. For that, as General Lama said, ceasefire is very important. Both the countries should immediately stop ceasefire, no hostilities. Then after that, the war is stopped. Then we can set up, okay, let's set up this commission, let's set up this body through which we will listen to both the parties. Then they will come out with a proposal that this demand is accepted, this demand. So whatever panel is decided can be acceptable to both. Until we don't propose this kind of practical idea, which could be acceptable to both parties will keep fighting and killing each other. So the very purpose of this kind of seminar was that we have to come out with proposal, with idea which looks attractive to both the sides. Many people try to make a devil of Putin. I don't think devil is Putin, but Putin is devil. I don't think that Ukrainian people are looking for war. No, we have to trust in the goodness of human nature. That's what Gandhi told us. Both Putin and Ukrainian people are good people. And if given the opportunity, they will stop the war. They will stop the killing. Nobody likes the killing. Nobody likes the killing. Believe me, European people, Americans are trying their best to demonize Putin and try to tell he's a Hitler, he's a Mussolini, so he must be defeated. That's not a good approach. Putin is not a Mussolini, Putin is not a Hitler. He's an ordinary person. He can be brought to table. He can be convinced to cease fire, to end the war, if we give him a suitable proposal, suitable alternative. suitable way out, what we call in English terms, in military terms, exit point, exit strategy. So exit strategy is that we propose that we set up this neutral commission for in which will send to both the parties and then come out with a proposal to bring a permanent peace. That way we can go forward and then we can listen to both ideas. I know both the parties are great parties. Russians have a lot of their own grievances and Ukrainians their own grievances. So list is very long. It has a historical legacy. It is not one day problem. It's not just the war is not started just last year. The war started a long time ago because a lot of historical legacies are there. So it's very complicated. It cannot be solved through arms. It can be solved through arms. So we have to come out with a proposal through which both the parties can come to an conclusion and solve the war. Otherwise, people like us, we simply cannot sit tight and say, okay, war is far away, but war is not stopped. War can go nuclear. War can go nuclear, and then all of us have to pay a very high price. As you know, Russia is nuclear power. The way European powers, Americans are arming Ukraine, there's high possibility that Russia may think, oh, this war will not end without using nuclear weapons. So they may use nuclear weapons. If that happens, all of us will have a high price. So we must understand the price we might end up paying if we don't do something now. We must do something now. We must be active. We must try to convince both the parties that the best interest of peace is served if you stop war immediately. We know we must accept that they have some grievances, they have some issues that can be solved through discussion, through table talk. But we must give them some justice. We must give them the light that they will get justice from their perspective. That justice, that hope will come from the neutral commission. And that kind of hope will make them feel, okay, we can stop fighting now, let's talk and let's bring peace. And that was my small proposal. I think my friends will give a thought to it. Once again, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. It is very important that even though we are not related with Ukraine war anyway, but we are men of God. We are children of God. There's no way can ignore that somebody, some child, some wife, some mother is dying unnecessarily. We must talk about peace. And peace is the urgent necessity of our times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. That was a wonderful feedback from you, to hear from you. Listening to all the speakers here made me think like something which I listened, which I heard when I was young, that was bring nothing but widows and orphans. So I think there is an immediate need to end this war and bring people to the negotiation table. Having said so, our final speaker is, I would like to invite a final speaker, Mr. Ansar Ali. He would like to have a few words and then we'll open the floor for the questions from the audience. Mr. Ansar Ali.
Ansar, open your. Ansar, open your mic.
Sir, you need to unmute yourself and then you can speak up.
Now I'm audible.
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect, sir.
Hello?
Go ahead. Yes, perfect, sir. Go ahead.
After listening to so many peace activists, thinkers, intellectuals like Ila Gandhi ji, Dr. A.N. ji, Dr. ji, General Lamba ji. So I have nothing to say much about this, but I would like to draw some conclusions or some summary of the situation in the society, family, as well as at the international level. The question is here, why conflict arises? Conflict arises due to greed, selfish nature, and ego. All these evil forces create fight, war, or coercive methods. And All from all these have a root. And what is the root? Root is a lie. Lie. We used to speak lie, and so many times we speak lie, it becomes truth. So it is the lie. It is the lie which is the mother of violence and conflict. And the way to peace is the way of truth, as Gandhiji used to say. He said so many times that non-violence is of the strongest, not of the weak. It is, we can say, non-violence is superior to violence. And we have to set an example, as Gandhiji set an example. When World War II started, he had chosen individual satyagrahi to oppose Second World War. So, Ukraine-Russian war, we have to adopt this method. Through individual satyagraha, we can resist or we can oppose this war. Why this war is happening? Because we are away from truth. This war is not for a right thing. It is for making profit, as other people also spoken. And if we want to have justice, then we have to do just act to others. From his Satyagraha philosophy, we can draw some guidelines how to approach about it. In Satyagraha philosophy, we don't have to retaliate. Whether your opponent, Gandhiji used the word opponent, not enemy. Whether your opponent is beating you, abusing you, you don't have to retaliate. In this line, we can draw unilateral disarmament. Now nations are going for armaments. They are using modern technology. They are using technology for destroying others to teach a lesson. This technology can be used to save humanity. We are spending millions, billions on armament. So we have to stop this armament race. If we want to make or build a human society, just society, then we have to see the cause of the violence. Structural violence is the cause of this destroying things. So as Gandhiji supported UNESCO efforts, he commented, I am quoting, I am deeply interested in the efforts of UNESCO. What was UNESCO doing at that time? To secure peace through educational and cultural activities. So we have to start from the young generations, especially from the children. We have to focus on children. We have to focus on young generation. We have to inculcate values, values of non-violence, values of thank you. I have commented my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to open the floor for questions from our participants who have joined us. If anyone has a question, they can put forward to any of the speakers that we have here. I think there are no questions as such,
Okay.
and therefore,
Hello.
yes, sir.
I would like to ask one question to Ila Gandhi ji. Ma'am, what do you think? What is the way forward? How this bar will end, and how? What should we do now to bar how to play active role in bringing this bar to an end?
It's a difficult question to just answer off the cuff. But I think if we all get together, we can look at what is it that will bring the parties together to the table. What are some of the ways in which we can pressurize them to come to the table? And I think, we have to look at international community playing a role in perhaps boycott of goods that go to these countries. We can look at some prominent people talking to the leaders and persuading them to come to the table. So there are many different ways. One is through pressurizing them through economic pressure, community pressure, cultural and sports and so on. We could make sure that these two countries are pressurized by the international community through places like the United Nations and other important international bodies. That's the one way. The second way is for prominent people to be able to go and seek audience with the leadership of the two countries and get them to agree to come to the table. So I think those are two ways in which we can play a role. So how do I play a role as one person in a country who is who is concerned? And I think that is to apply pressure to the people in my country. Go to our own international relations people, go to our own leadership in this country and tell them that this is what we want you to do. Take it up at United Nations, take it up with the leaders that you encounter. So that's the one way in which we as individuals can begin to play a role. Gather people together in your own neighborhood and apply pressure right here in our own country and on our own leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for your reply. And I think we have to wind up because the time is already past. So I would like to first thank everyone who have joined us today, and the Indian Overseas Congress. Special thanks to them and Kisle Kumar, the president, for promoting it in different platforms, and to other persons here. It was a wonderful to hear the perspective and views of all the speakers. I hope we can carve out a way for peaceful settlement of the war going between Ukraine and Russia. And I think the input from all these wonderful speakers will give a platform for initiation. At last, I would like to call Dr. Lakhvinder Singh for his end remarks and vote of thanks.
Thank you, Teshi.
Sir, can you just turn off your on off your videos?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
In the end, I would like to say my very special thanks to Ila Gandhi ji, Anna Malai ji, and our very special General Amba Sahab. It was very kind of them to come to our come to our webinar and give us their perspective. As they know, we are not so big organization. We are very small. We are just taking baby steps and trying to motivate young people to join us. So with their speech, with their motivational speech, I think it will help us to grow more in Korea. So sport of seniors is very important for us, and it matters to us. I think we will be able to take their message to Korean youngsters and try to involve them into our more and more activities. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you everyone who joined us today for today's working day, but most of us took their time from their offices and joined us. So this is a big thing in Korea to join a webinar like this when it's working time. So today is a working day, but they joined us from their offices. So I really want to thank all of our friends who joined to us today. That their support, their presence here means a lot to us, and we will look forward to them for their support, for their blessing in our coming events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Once again, I thank one and all present here. Have a good day.
Thank you,
sir.
Dr. Lakhvinder. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Ma'am,
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Pleasure hearing you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Anamlai.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you, Ansar.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.